Welcome to the Perfect Life Awakening Show, hosted by Royce Morales. Royce has been a transformational facilitator, teaching groundbreaking, spiritually based courses for more than 4 decades. She is the author of 3 books about her teachings. Join Royce as she takes you on a journey into how to live your best life and find your true purpose through discovering the origins of subconscious, disempowering notions and releasing them. She talks with experts and inspiring people just like you who learned to trust their intuitive inner wisdom, which led to life-changing shifts. Today, her guests live an empowered existence and are helping change the world to a higher consciousness place based on truth and love. You deserve to awaken to, align with, and embody your true self and live a life filled with love. Transform yourself from triggered to empowered and create your perfect life. Here is your host, Royce Morales.
Hello, welcome to the Perfect Life Awakening Show. We had some technical difficulties, which happens, So happy New Year to everybody. I'm so excited to be here. And I just love doing this show. And I hope you guys are enjoying listening and watching us as we talk about some important things. And I interview some amazing guests, such as the wonderful woman that I have here today, Candice Sanderson, who had some technical difficulties and remained so calm. That was awesome. Thank you, Candice. Thank you for being here. So I want to, first of all, introduce her because she has such an amazing story, so profound and so perfect for all of you listeners, because I know most of you listening and watching you're not new to this metaphysical realm. It's not anything that should be shocking to anybody. But hearing Candice's story really shook me. It was just like, wow, that's just amazing. So basically, Candice was a clinically trained psychologist, and she used to view the world strictly through her 5 senses. Everything needed to be logically understood and, explained by saying, this is the reality here. She actually, I'm looking at my notes about her. She describes her life as typical, comfortable, and maybe even boring.
Yes.
That's pretty funny. But then in 2013, she was on her way to work, which was a short commute, and she spontaneously started receiving messages from all kinds of realms, and she'll describe all that to you. And her immediate thought was, oh my God, what's wrong with me? I've been there, done that, Candice. I understand that feeling. It's like, what? Why me? But she started to chronicle this expedition that she was having. And she's written several books, a whole series. And I think they're all, the basic title is The Reluctant Messenger, various degrees of that. And the books share a conversation that she's had with angels and masters and star beings and all kinds of interesting out there realms, beings. And you're kind of taken along with her as she redefines her life and her purpose. So welcome to my show, Candice. And I just have to tell everybody that when I asked Candice what she would like to talk about in today's show, she thought about it for a while, or I guess maybe even meditated on it for a while. And she came back to me and she said, I want to compare notes with what you do. It's very comparable to what you've been given and the information and the techniques and all of that you've been given. And just so my audience knows, everything that I do comes from an intuitive place. I've been doing this for over 4 decades, as the announcer said. And it first started out thinking, oh my God, I don't know what I'm going to be teaching. And I had all these people arriving in my living room and I didn't know what I was talking about. And then I was sharing some kind of spiritual, because, I've been studying spirituality for, my entire adult life. And I was sharing all that information. And one of my students looked at me and he said, well, that's all well and good, but how do you get there? And I said, well, and what I wanted to say was, who the hell knows? But because I've been struggling with it too. But what came out of my mouth was, well, here's how you do it. And I was given, I mean, I felt it being received. I was given a technique that helps people get in touch with the origins or the roots of their self-sabotage and their negative beliefs and their fears and all that stuff. And I demonstrated on one of my students right there, right then. And I had no idea what I was doing, but words came out of my mouth and we did this little inner process. And she opened her eyes at the end and she was like, oh my God. And the whole class was sitting there going, oh my God. And I was going, oh my God. It's been that way ever since. And from that experience, everything in her life changed. And of course, I started applying it to my teachings. So let's talk about, first of all, tell us your story, because I've already yacked enough about me. Tell us your story, how this came to be. Just explain yourself to all of us.
Okay. I'm kind of like you. All of a sudden, something happened and I opened and information started coming through me. Now, I wasn't anticipating it. Like you say, I was on my way to work one day. And when you're, how you're in that area of your brain, you're just not really paying attention to anything. It's early in the morning. My car was on automatic pilot. I was thinking about the day's schedule. And all of a sudden, this beautiful message came in. And it was so clear, Royce, that it was not from me. That one of the first things I thought of was, oh my gosh, that is so pretty. I wish I'd thought of it. I mean, I knew it was not from me. But it was a message about a flower. And they described a flower. They said, its roots reach down to Mother Earth, and then it ascends toward Father Sky. And when it's in perfect alignment with Source, it produces a flower. Now, those were terms I did not use: Source, Father Sky, or being in alignment with Source. But when it's in alignment, it then produces a flower. And then I saw and heard the word flower, and I knew it was hyphenated. And they said that humans too are flowers of energy. And if we go with the flow, and if we're grounded, and if we have an intention, they didn't say it that way, then we are just open to all these beautiful possibilities. Well, my first thought, of course, being a psychologist, I mean, I was trained as a clinical psychologist. At the time, I was working as a school psychologist. And my training taught me very firmly that if you are hearing or seeing something that is not derived by your physical senses, then it's either wishful thinking, it's fantasy, or it's pathology. And I'm thinking,
I was going to say, lock her up, right?
yes. So Royce, I actually went through the DSM-5, which is the diagnostic manual we use for diagnosing. I went through that for psychosis, and was in my mind, I'm saying, nope, 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 nope. But I just thought, I don't know what this is, so I will just deny it. Let's just not deal with it. I got to work, a few minutes later, I'm going in the side entrance. I've got my keys in my hand, and all of a sudden, this beautiful tree, it's a Royal Poinciana. And for those who aren't familiar with it, it has a beautiful canopy. It has like a gnarly, wide spreading trunk. And the flowers, the blooms on this tree look like orchids. They're beautiful. Royce, I passed this tree 100 times. It's a tree, right? And all of a sudden, this tree spoke to me. And I looked at it, and I had, I guess, what was one of the most, probably the first really mystical experience of my life. And as I looked at this tree, I realized it was just as much alive as I was. And as I'm staring at it, I am in this space where time doesn't even exist. And my eyes are drawn to this tiny bud that hasn't opened. And I realized that's me. That's that flower, that flower that has yet to open. And it made me realize I had so quickly dismissed that beautiful message about a flower. And I realized, oh my goodness, I have just stepped into a world I wasn't familiar with,
Wow.
a world that ended up changing my life. Now, after that, I started getting messages from people who had passed. I got messages, as you said earlier, from angels, all over the place. But as a psychologist, my training taught me to step back and be the objective observer. If I jumped in, as I did initially, and said, wait, this is wrong, this is pathology, I would stop that flow, that flower of energy. Also, if I said, oh, this is great, I'm channeling, it would do the same thing. So I left my judgment, I pushed that aside, and I allowed the words and the messages just to come through. And being that objective observer, I documented every night. I mean, I got into the situation where every morning I would get in my car, get my iPhone, hit record, and the messages would flow just like dictation. I knew what words to use, what punctuation to use. If I made a mistake, I heard strike that, and then I had the corrected word.
Wow.
After a while, I realized a lot of the information I received, I could verify. But anyway, I didn't mean to go into such detail on that, but that was my beginning. But I do want to talk about you and our work. Royce, when you asked me to come on your show, like, a couple months ago, I started looking at some of your YouTube videos, and my jaw just dropped because I thought, look at the similarity between your work and mine. Now, your work is actually work, programs you've developed. My work really isn't work. It's just all the fun stuff that I've experienced. Now, comparing the two, sometimes the vocabulary is a little different, but the concepts are the same.
Yeah.
But what's most interesting, at least to me, is I began to understand why and how your programs work. Now, that understanding did not come from my training as a psychologist. It actually came from a more authentic source. And it's those messengers that I connected with way back in August of 2013.
Wow. Before we get into all that, gosh, thank you. That is such an amazing story. But this thought keeps coming to me. And since this show is about trusting your intuitive thoughts, I have to say it. I just think it's perfect that information was given to a psychologist, because first of all, your people trust the fact that you've got this education and these letters next to your name, and you're not some crazy hippie, the stereotypic metaphysically oriented person. You're not that person. Second of all, I was thinking, wow, how many people in mental institutions, and I've read statistics about this, how many people in mental institutions are actually in touch with some other realms that we can't understand. And so we lock them up,
Right.
It's astounding how many people, statistically speaking, are in that situation. And if somebody like you had this happen to them, think about what that's going to do to those people that maybe can't, express it as beautifully as you're expressing it, but nonetheless, they're receiving that information too. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. And, that's a great point to bring up, because, initially I am thinking, once I started getting all this information, I was thinking, why me?
Yeah.
Why me? Why doesn't this information come to some guru or some person who's always meditated or who's been connected? And then I didn't realize that I was on an interview once, and the person said, oh, but Candice, you're the perfect person for it.
Yes.
Because you were trained as a psychologist. You didn't go overboard and just say, yeah, this is great, now I'm channeling. You sat back and used your judgment, and you collected data, and that data supported what you had done.
Yeah.
One of the first things I thought of, because my training initially was as a clinical psychologist before I moved into school psychology, was, what about all those people that I helped evaluate years ago that part of my interpretation of their behavior was my view of them being, their behavior being pathological.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Now I realized I would certainly do things differently, and I do things
Yeah.
differently now. I'm retired now, but what I see in the field of psychology and social work, and I see psychiatrists doing this, they are opening and accepting some of these types of experiences that we've had, and they accept them as gifts. They're
Yes.
no longer always seen as pathology.
Yes. Yeah. I think there really is a big shift in that field. And I always like to tell people that my middle name is Skeptic. And if something,
Mine is reluctant.
yeah, I should do a whole series of books called The Skeptic.
Right.
But I find that it has to be proven to me. So it sounds like
Yes.
it's definitely been proven to you. I think it's a very important quality. And I think that if I didn't have that quality, and if you didn't have your background, I don't think people would really accept what we're saying, because I still, every time I teach, I still learn something, or I still have a question posed to me that I go, uh, and then I have to trust whatever comes out of my mouth. So, yeah.
And that's it. It's learning to trust.
Yeah.
Now, after months of collecting data, I reached a tipping point, and I realized all the information coming to me was beautiful, and it was genuine on a level that I wasn't accustomed to. And I began to trust it. I mean, think about this. Like, I love dreams. I have a dream journal that's almost 250,000 words long. And a lot of times in the dream, I might have someone who comes to me who's passed away, a loved one or a loved one of someone else, and they'll give me a message. When those things happen to me before my opening, I chalked it up to wishful thinking. Now I've learned to trust that information.
Yeah.
When we are in a dream state, that personality that we have that says, oh, don't trust that, you can't believe that, that is asleep. Our egos are asleep. So we are open to this beautiful experience.
Yeah.
It's all just energy, and it's all just spirit. So the information that comes in, I trust. Now, when someone comes into me now and they passed away, I know that it is truly them connecting to me. And if people could only trust those sorts of interactions, look how much healing there would be.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because as you're talking, I'm kind of putting some pieces together in my life, because one of the very first things I did on my spiritual journey was to become a channeler. I was trained in it. I would give people these, amazing readings. And every time I would get information for somebody, I would go, there would be part of me that would be going, oh, this is crazy. And then they'd go, oh, yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah. But I let that part of myself go. I can still access it, but I really focused more on teaching and, evolving spiritually and all the stuff that I do. But recently I had one of my students had a death in her family. It was her mom. And she asked me if I could do a meditation with her. And we did. And her mom just like showed up immediately. And I was channeling her mom and saying all of these things. And it was so profound, but still there was part of me that would be like, why am I seeing this? And I would tell her and she'd go, oh, I know exactly what that means. So there's, I think part of what I'm doing in my life is coming full circle from a different place. And I don't know, did you ever have any kind of metaphysical experience before this, or is it all completely brand new to you?
I was always interested in these kinds of things, but as far as having any kind of experience or any kind of skill set in that area, no. Like my mother, for example, was very intuitive. She had what we call back then ESP. So if she said something about she had a feeling about this or a feeling about that, I learned to listen to it because what I learned later is those were precognitions. She knew something was going to happen,
Yeah.
and it always happened. But as far as me, I mean, I kind of chuckled when I heard you say, well, you were trained as a channeler. And I'm thinking, I'm trained as someone who drives to work. And all of a sudden, it just happens to me. And so, with your training and then with me spontaneously having this happen, it's still natural to think, am I making this up? Where is
Yeah.
this coming from? But it's learning to not judge, to step back and be that objective observer and tell the client that you're with or the friend that you're with, this is what I'm seeing. And then they can make sense of it. They may recognize it immediately, or a week or two after your connection to them, it might occur. But we are those channels that we help bring that information in to them.
Yeah.
I want to talk about something that really excited me when I was reading and checking your YouTube channels. And Royce, it's about the tools that you use. I know that you use a shovel and a mirror to help interact with consciousness.
Here's my shovel. I don't know if you can see it, but I've got a little shovel hanging there.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I love it. When I read that, I got cold chills, which is just one of my signs of like, whoa, really pay attention.
Me too.
Because those tools are absolutely brilliant. Now, I kept smiling because I thought that is such a parallel to where I am. I am just finishing a series on consciousness on one of my YouTube channels called The Reluctant Messenger. And in this series, what do? I go over the tools. These are tools that the messengers have given me. A lot of them are in my first book. And then I have another YouTube channel called The Reluctant Messenger Unleashed. It's kind of like a virtual book club on my first book where we discuss these tools. But when I had these tools given to me, they were given to me through my experiences, but I didn't realize they were tools. It's like just something that happened. Now I've embraced them and I use at least some of them every single day. Now, you talk about the lower self, the middle self, and the higher self. And as I started, researching what you said about those, I thought that dovetails perfectly with what the messengers tell me. Now, the messengers say that consciousness itself is also a tool. And if we want to later, I can go more into that. But that lower self, middle self, and higher self is just perfect. It's just such a perfect description. And I just loved how it fit into my philosophy. It's not my philosophy. It's a philosophy that I follow based on the messengers.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you for the confirmation. I really appreciate it. And just in case anybody, I don't know if anybody out there, I guess I should sort of just briefly explain the difference between those three aspects, because that is really the tool that I use in my courses. The lower self is the fear-based consciousness. It's the part of us that is triggered. It's the part of us that functions from needing to survive, making sure this body is okay. And it gets triggered the minute we are conceived because we're very, very attached to this physical form. The middle self is the logical mind, the part of us that tries to figure everything out and understand things logically. It also tries to figure out what the lower self is wanting us to do. So if we have this fear-based reaction, the middle self says, okay, well, what can I do with that? How can I function from that in a logical, socially acceptable way? I'm seriously shortening the definitions here, but just for conversation's sake. And then the higher self is our higher consciousness. It's our spirit, our soul. It understands why we're here, the lessons we're supposed to learn, the things that we're here to clean up. I talk a lot about that in my courses. And it is as strong as the lower self is weak. If we have a strong lower self, that higher self is just out of commission. Middle self gets in the way of that too. as I was saying before, that skeptical, logical, everything has to have facts and figures behind it. That can prevent us from being in touch with our higher self as well. So that just kind of explains it briefly. But that's so nice to hear that you're receiving, confirmation on that definition. Yeah.
And not only confirmation, but the messengers have shown me how that works. So how your tools work and how they all fit together. Now,
Yeah.
I'm going to really try to truncate this because I could go on forever about it, but the messengers have told me about something called a point of existence. Now, we don't have to remember the name. The point of existence is a way to visualize consciousness. And this is part of how they say that we can use consciousness as a tool. For most of us, as soon as we're born, that point of existence resides in our body. Okay, that's your lower self. It is so deeply embedded in our bodies that we think we are our physical bodies.
Exactly.
We live in the physical world. We go about our lives only in the physical world. We live on survival of the fittest. It's primitive. And well, I'm bringing in my psychology now, but you remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We're at the lower level: food, clothing, and shelter. It's all about interacting with our physical surroundings. Now, this point of existence, which is consciousness, is how we visualize consciousness. One day, for some people, that starts to expand. And when it expands, we're now moving from a particle form to a field state. And when we do, something happens. First of all, we notice the observer. So this is kind of like your middle self. Mm-hmm. Because all of a sudden we have someone who's giving us information. Mm-hmm. We have someone who's saying, oh, look at this, look at that. Like my observer, for example, she's always there. I'm not known to be real graceful, so I can be walking somewhere and I'll trip, and just on a sidewalk or trip on the shadow, and my observer says, "Oh boy, I hope no one saw you," or "Oh, there she goes again." I mean, it's kind of a friendly, but it's someone other than me that is observing me and beginning to give me guidance. Maybe next time avoid that banana peel. But what I like about this, we can all realize, we all know that an observer is there. Sometimes they're judgmental. Sometimes they'll give us a pat on the back, but they start guiding us. Try this, how about that? Or don't do that. But what's happened when that observer comes in, what the messengers tell me is that's a beautiful sign, because we realize we have expanded just outside the physical body, just enough for this non-physical aspect of ourselves, the observer, to come in and start judging. Now, as we expand even farther through meditation, through a near-death experience, let's hope not, through shamanic ceremonies, through prayer, through whatever ways, we realize that we go beyond just the observer, and we dip our toes into this field of cosmic consciousness. Right. And that's when we start approaching the boundaries, but there are no boundaries, of the higher self. Yeah. So your lower self, middle self, and higher self just fit perfectly into what the messengers have shown me about consciousness. Yeah. And when we become aware of that, like here's the observer, now let's stretch even farther. If your critical observer is there, which is like maybe using your mirror, we can push her aside and just let her rest. And we can bring in higher vibrational energies through love, through positive thoughts, through smiling. And then we expand even more, and we're in that field of divine grace.
Right. Before we take a break, I just want to add one thing. When I talk about the lower self, I talk about how important it is to listen to those criticisms and judgments that go on when we trip on a banana peel or whatever, because those are, they're signposts to show us that there's
Yes.
something underneath that was programmed that needs to get resolved. So if I trip on a banana
Absolutely.
peel and I hear my lower self going, "Oh, you're such a klutz," or whatever it is that judges about me, I'm able to capture that I call it a belief, and source it back and find out where it came from. So it's a very valuable tool. So
I'm guessing that's when your shovel comes into play.
that's where the shovel comes in. Yeah, that's exactly it. We need to take a bit of a break, but we will continue talking together with Candice Sanderson. And this is really fascinating. Thank you so much. We'll be right back.
OMTimes TV. Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. OMTimes Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, OMTimes offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an OMTimes magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on OMTimes TV and broadcasting it across the extensive OMTimes radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. OMTimes. Open yourself to the possibilities. Transform your life from triggered to empowered with the Perfect Life Awakening program. Royce Morales' extraordinary, enlightening, spiritually based teachings that get to the core of subconscious underlying motivations driving your life. With more than 4 decades as a transformational facilitator and author, Royce Morales offers ways to awaken your deserving, authentic existence, free from paralyzing issues, repetitive patterns, and programmed fears, while simultaneously awakening your spiritually aware higher consciousness, purposeful self. Perfect Life Awakening offers remote group classes and one-on-one sessions to explore even deeper levels. Check out Royce Morales' books, Want, True Love, Past Lives, and Other Complications. No, A Spiritual Wake-Up Call. And Back, Rebirth After Stroke. Learn more about Perfect Life Awakening and Royce Morales. Visit roycemorales.com.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Welcome back. I'm Royce Morales, and I'm talking today with Candice Sanderson, and she is the author of a bunch of books about being a reluctant messenger, and she talks about her experiences and some really fascinating events that have happened to her. But we were just talking about how consciousness works, and you mentioned something about mirrors, which is a huge aspect of what I teach. And it's something that in all the years I've been doing this, nobody ever likes it. I've had people walk out. I've had people, years after years of taking my courses say to me, so what do you mean by mirrors? Even though I talk about it all the time, there's a lot of resistance to that concept. But basically mirrors is a concept that, again, was given to me that says that everything that pushes your buttons is a mirror of some aspect of yourself that you need to look at and you're in denial of, you've pushed down, you've put in the closet somewhere. And again, like I was saying earlier before the break, it's a great tool to discover your denial so you can get to the source of it and resolve it. So how do you talk about mirrors, or have you been given information about mirrors at all in your amazing work?
I haven't had any information that is specific to mirrors, other than when I start looking at the observer and I look at which of course is that first step in realizing we've stepped beyond the low self or beyond the physical, because we've now engaged with this other aspect of ourselves that's a little distant enough where he or she can start commenting. And, just like with your mirror, if you try to push something down, or you don't like this because this happens and you try to bury it, well, guess what? It's going to pop up again, time and time again. And I know this as a psychologist. When I did clinical work, I cannot tell you how many times I might work with a couple in therapy. And, they had a relationship that was less than desired. And they might break away from that relationship, which would be something that was positive. And then a few months later, one of the couples would come back in. They're in a brand new relationship. And guess what? They have the same behavior, so you might think you're pushing it down and you're getting rid of it, but you're not. It will manifest time and time again.
Yeah.
This is where looking at the observer, when you realize the observer is commenting on what you're doing, or how do you feel during this relationship? How does that make you feel? Don't deny it, don't push it aside, but really delve into it and look. Because we're on this life, our life, we're on this earth to learn lessons. And if we don't learn it the first time, we're going to learn it the next time, or the next time, and the next time, whether that's different lifetimes or different relationships in this lifetime. It's given to us in order for us to look at ourselves and to grow.
Yeah.
And what I really like with the messages that I'm getting is there is such unity. When we step beyond the physical body, we realize we are part of all that is. So every positive thought that we have helps all of those around us. Every positive thing that we do and think is helping to uplift all of us, because we are all connected. Yeah. So when your observer says that maybe wasn't a good thought to have, or maybe you could have handled something differently, listen to that observer, listen to that and see what is it you're trying to push away that's going to just come right back.
Yeah. I take it a little bit further than that with my mirroring concept. And I have funny names for all these things. I call it the seesaw effect. So if you take one side of a seesaw and you push it down, it has to come up somewhere else. So it might be trying to come up in you, but if you're ignoring it, it's going to come up around you. So an example of this out of my own life was I had a lot of suppressed anger. I didn't know I had suppressed anger. I thought I was this calm, peaceful, loving being. And I married my husband, and all of a sudden, this wonderful guy that I married was like punching holes in walls when he'd get upset. And I finally said, okay, well, there must be a mirror here of something, because, I'm certainly not angry.
Not me.
And so when I looked deeper at it, I realized that he was a reflection of my suppressed anger. I was pushing it down. He was acting on it. Yes. And when I resolved the source of that and what that was really about for me, guess what? He stopped punching out walls. So everything around us is a mirror. If it's showing us in our face what we don't want to see about ourselves. So yes, it comes out in us physically, emotionally, mentally, the same patterns over and over. But what are they showing us that we're suppressing about ourselves by acting a certain way? Yeah.
I love that analogy of the seesaw. That is just so perfect. And this is one thing that I've really enjoyed working with the messengers is they have given me things I can look at and see. Like, I don't have a seesaw, but I can have something like that. And by using that sort of tool, you're actually working with concepts on an energy level. Like, for example, I put up a bubble around me, especially if I'm going out in public. I bring energy down, like up through my feet, through the top of my head, and I swirl it around me. And I have this protective bubble of energy. So if I'm passing someone who might, like if I go to the mall, which I don't like to go, but there's all these people around, their energy is everywhere. Sometimes I want to just protect myself from other people's energy and keep my energy intact. So I build this bubble. Now, it's just a tool. It's a bubble that I build around me, but it actually works. So the tools that you have are wonderful ways to actually delve into the roots of problems, and they can also help us on a day-to-day basis. It's not, the tool is just another way for us to tap into the energy that is around us. The messengers have given me a formula, TEA, thoughts, energy, and action. We have a thought that needs to be fueled in order for it to become the action or for it to be manifested. So if we have a thought that we want to do something, if all of a sudden we say, oh, I can't do that, there's no way I can go out and run 2 miles. Well, I can't, but I can't do that. Then we've just fueled that action with doubt. You can't do that. Yeah. And so the manifestation or the action is going to be based on how we fuel things. But if we have a thought and we fuel it with positive energy, then we're changing the trajectory of our manifestation. So any kind of thought that you have, think of how are you fueling it? Are you fueling it with low energy, which would be doubt or anger or those lower emotions? Or are you fueling it with something that's positive? And there's a quick way that we can change our vibration. But I do this several times a day. I just take deep breaths and I imagine energy coming in through my heart. And if you can't visualize it, that's okay. You just have to think about it. And as the energy comes in, I put a smile on my face, because smiling, whether you feel like it or not, automatically ramps up your energy. So I smile as I bring that energy in. I watch it or think about it going through my body, and then I exhale. And as I exhale, I see or think about energy leaving me that didn't help me, like stale energy. So just by doing that technique a couple times a day, what you're actually doing is raising your vibrations, which will help in that T formula, help you manifest what you really want to.
And again, I take it one step further, which is, why do I not believe that I'm deserving of having that, whatever it is that I'm asking for, whatever I'm sending energy out for? Because I find that, not to invalidate anything you're saying, I think it's beautiful, but I think we have to get to the origins. Otherwise it's a constant, okay, right. It's the seesaw again. So by getting to the origins of where I decided I'm not deserving of having what I want, I don't deserve to get a raise, I don't deserve to publish my next book or whatever it is, that can shift the energy automatically. Yes. So that we don't even have to consciously send it out. It's just there. It becomes a being part of us rather than a doing, that struggle. Yeah. So, and even what you said about putting a bubble around you, I used to do all that religiously. And then I found that, well, what if I go out to a mall and something pushes my buttons or somebody cuts me off on the freeway on the way to the mall? What do I need to see about that? What is that a mirror of for me? Why is it engaging me? Why is it pushing my button? Why is it triggering me? And again, it gives me more food to look within and see what it's about, And I know, I always tell people this when they start my courses, it's not easy. it's much easier to just put the bubble on
Right.
and do that, which again is beautiful, but it kind of misses an opportunity for us to see what's really going on underneath that fear. What is that really about? Does that make sense?
Not only does it make sense, I'm kind of chuckling here because here I am trained as a psychologist where you look at the root of the problem, and I'm getting this information from the messengers that show me why and how it works, because it's raising your vibration, it's all energy, etc. And you are pulling in those beautiful training, not only from a spiritual realm, but from as a psychologist, you're saying, yes, but we need to look at it. And I just thought, oh, these roles are reversed. That's perfect. Of course you need to look at it.
Yeah.
I'm going to just give you my degrees.
Oh, God. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Wow. So, yeah. So,
but what I like about this is your program works so well because you're using the tools of the shovel to dig down to see what's beneath this, what's underneath these problems that keep appearing and reappearing in your life.
yes.
But the messengers are showing me why that shovel works, and it's all the energy. So once you dig down and see what it is, then you're allowing that energy to flow. You're no longer going to be blocked. The messengers told me once about a wound, for example, like you may have a splinter that's festered and it's deep inside your body and it looks like it's healed over, but it hasn't. Yeah. So in order to actually have it heal fully, you've got to dig down and pull that splinter out. Yeah. Because it poisons everything around it. Yeah. So it is painful when you have to dig out the splinter. But once you do, you're releasing that negative energy. You're releasing those toxins. Yes. And that is what allows you to have complete healing. Yeah, I like that visual. That's great. Yeah. Well, I'm not responsible for it. The messengers were, but I like it too. Right. Yeah. Well, I think just to kind of go back to something you were saying, we've got to get to the root of things that are going on that are pushing our buttons or triggering us. But I always add in the spiritual intention behind that. Because if you don't add that, then it just becomes psychology. It just deals with the mind and all of that. It has to go deeper. It has to get to the point of, well, then why? What is this about on a spiritual level? What am I supposed to learn from this? What was I supposed to teach from this? What was the energy that I was supposed to give the world with this? So I always incorporate that with my teachings. So excellent. Yeah. So tell us, thank you so much for including me in your conversation. This is refreshing. Tell us a little bit about your books and anything that you would like to transmit to the audience, any words of wisdom. So say whatever you want to say. Okay. Right. Okay. My first book is The Reluctant Messenger. And the subtitle is Tales from Beyond Belief, because I originally didn't believe them myself, but it all goes back to your belief systems. Your beliefs rule your life, but until you realize they're just beliefs and maybe we need to look at them differently, then that's when things will start to change. Yeah, definitely. But there's another subtitle to that book that says An Ordinary Person's Extraordinary Journey into the Unknown. So if something like this, that opening to channel, could happen to me, not someone who was trained in it, but someone who actually didn't believe it, then it could happen to anyone. My second book is The Reluctant Messenger Returns, and it talks about, I've got one right here, and it is a book that says An Unexpected Adventure into the Angelic Realm. So this is more specific about some of the connections I've had with angels. And then, because my books, especially that first one, is so different, I connect with star beings, which I didn't even know existed. I connect with religious icons, cultural icons. I have information that comes to me about time and how that works. But each chapter is so different that I started from the Reluctant Messenger series. And I've got 5 books. They're very short. The first 4 are, well, they're originally from my first book. The last book called, I don't even like to tell people this, called Close Encounters, chronicles something that just occurred a few months ago with me. But these books are now ebook, and this year, 2023, I'm working on making them into paperback and hardback books. But the last one talks about a close encounter that I had on May 1st when I was at the Monroe Institute attending a program that had nothing to do with close encounters. It was a program about near-death experiences. Mm. And this was so bizarre, according to my standards. It's like, I don't want to tell anyone this. And then I thought, I need to let people know. I mean, it felt disingenuous not to. So, that's something else. If you're interested in close encounters, which I absolutely was not, that's something you might want to choose. But these are like samplings of my work if you don't want to buy the first book. Second book. I also have a podcast called The Reluctant Messenger podcast. I have a couple of YouTube channels. I'm on social media, but you can just find these things out through my webpage at CandiceSanderson.com. But I'm so proud that every book I've done, in fact, my first book has a second edition out, so there's 7 books in all, and they've all reached that #1 bestseller on Amazon in several categories. That's not really due to me. It's due to the people out there that are wanting this type of information. We're all realizing we are more than our physical bodies. Yes. There's a whole world out there, a spiritual world that we can become more of on a conscious level, and it will improve. It will offer us newer opportunities.
Yes. Wow. Well, I can't wait to have you on again. I'd love to hear about some of the latest adventures that you've gone through and talk more about the similarities between our information. And, I have to say this, it sounds to me like that reluctant part of you is no longer reluctant.
Right.
The formerly reluctant messenger. Yes.
There you go.
Yeah. And so how do people get in touch with you, and how do people find your books?
Amazon is probably the easiest way to find my books. You can order them at any, Barnes & Noble or whatever, but Amazon is probably the closest source. I used to sell them over my website, but I'm trying to simplify my life. If you really want an autographed copy, you can get my email, through my website and contact me, and I'll do that. But I'm trying to simplify, so Amazon works the best for me.
And what is the website address?
Candice, CANDICE, CandiceSanderson.com.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Candice. This was really wonderful. Keep up the good work and the writing and the receiving messages. They're important. As you were saying, we're all spiritual beings, and we are starting to come around to that. And I know that the work that you do and the work that I do is about waking people up, getting out of fear, and becoming loving, amazing spiritual beings. And I think it's happening slowly in the world.
But it is happening.
Really,
it is happening.
Yes, it really is. So have a wonderful rest of your year, and we'll be talking soon. And thank you all for listening. Great. Thank you so much. If you need to reach me, I am at roycemorales.com or perfectlifeawakening.com. And I have a weekly blog that I do. I'm on YouTube. You name it, I've got it. So get in touch. And I hope everybody has a wonderful new year as well. Thank you.